Part 1, The Blood Rose Chapter 1. Ryan was walking through the busy streets of London. He walked through dirty alleyways, always aware and never looking around. He adjusted his low-tied blonde ponytail and tugged at his backwards cap. He had checked the address and studied all the entries and exits, or the lack of exits. The honking, smell, and the begging of bums did nothing to distract the young man. He didn't like being here, but he moved to the door. "This is what I deserve," he said aloud to himself. He opened the door. To his surprise, it was spotless and smelled nice. At the receptionist's desk, he was welcomed by a warm atmosphere of nature paintings and soft music. He tentatively rang the small bell on the desk. "Good morning, sir." Ryan turned to look at the voice. What he saw was a skeleton wearing a sharp blue suit with a name tag that read Femur. "May I have your name, sir?" Ryan was quiet for a beat too long before he answered. "Ryan." The skeleton checked a pocket watch. "You seem to be 2 hours early, sir. I will go and check to see if the manager is ready to see you. Please have a seat." Unable to relax, Ryan sat and waited. The smooth jazz did nothing to help. Femur came back and led him to a door that read Manager. As Femur opened the door, all Ryan could smell was cigarette smoke. The room he entered was dimly lit, with a desk with papers strewn around and a large, overfilled ashtray. The man behind the desk looked to be in his late 40s with very short salt and pepper brown hair and a short beard. He was working with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. What stood out to Ryan was the leather jacket and gloves he was wearing. It was summer. "Why are you early?" He then motioned for Ryan to sit in the chair in front of the desk as he put out his cigarette. "I didn't want to be late." "Did you bring your paperwork?" Ryan pulled out an envelope, slowly unfolded the paper and passed the open letter to the old man. He then looked up and lit a cigarette and stared at the young man. "Why are you really early?" "I don't have anywhere else to go, sir." At the "sir," the older man held up his hand. "Don't call me that, call me Grizzly." He looked over Ryan's paperwork. "According to this, you lived in an orphanage until 14, and you disappeared for 7 years. He studied the young man's face as he spoke. No reaction. "What happened to you during that time?" Ryan kept quiet. Grizzly flicked some ash on the desk and then held up his hands. "Listen, kid, I am not here to judge you. I am just an old guy looking for the truth." At the young man's silence, Grizzly sighed. "This is a very dangerous career you want to be part of," he said as he took a big drag. "Does that bother you?" "No. It should." He never took his eyes from Ryan. "Have you ever worked as part of a team?" "No." "I understand. If you join my team, will you follow my orders without hesitation?" "Yes," he answered in a monotone without breaking eye contact. The old man stood up and effortlessly shoved his desk to the side with one hand, and paper flew everywhere as the desk hit the wall hard. Ryan didn't flinch. "Wrong." As he yelled, the cigarette flew from his mouth. He lit another cigarette and walked over to Ryan. "You need to follow your gut when orders are given." He got so close that Ryan could feel the heat from Grizzly's cigarette. People tend to make decisions based on what they believe, and some people believe in horse shit. The two men just stared at each other for a minute. "Should I leave? Why would I turn away the first guy to escape the Silver Tongues?" At the mention of that name, Ryan's eyes went wide. Without warning, he shot up and tried to run for the door. Grizzly was quicker and grabbed him by the arm. "Wait, I don't want to hurt you," the older man pleaded. "Let go of me." Ryan tried to punch at his throat, but the old man easily blocked his attack with the cigarette dangling from his mouth. As a last resort, he pulled out a dagger. As he tried to stab Grizzly, the older man casually caught the blade, and it instantly turned into smoke. "How?" The young man was caught unaware by this display. "You can do magic?" "I am part of the guild, kid." Grizzly put himself between Ryan and the door. "I am here to help you." Grizzly loosened his grip on Ryan's arm. How about we make a deal? Trust me for 24 hours and not a second more. Ryan tore his arm from Grizzly's grip. Fine, but if I sense anything, I'm gone. The monotone in his voice was no longer there. Agreed. Grizzly held out his hand, and the young man shook it. The hand was thinner than it was supposed to be. Please sit, you deserve an explanation. Ryan sat back down while Grizzly put the desk back in its place. I needed to see where you were, and you passed. Grizzly pointed to the ashtray on the floor. Do you mind? Ryan handed it to the old man, who lit another cigarette. I passed? How? His voice was back to its monotone, but his white knuckles on the armrests gave him away. Real killers always go for the easy kill. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he kept quiet. I think the blood rose could be good for you. He took another big drag. You might even make some friends. Ryan felt anger grow in his chest. He was just about to leap out of his chair when the door opened. Femur burst into the room, saluted and stood at attention. We have a code blue, sir. Immediate action is required. Ryan was surprised by this new development. Why is he here? The old man sighed and was still calm. He wishes to meet the, newbie, sir. The old man rubbed his forehead. Let him in. The door opened. A blue monster with shining blue scales and sharp jagged horns ducked down to enter the room. It was as wide as the door frame with a face that resembled a Komodo dragon. Ryan got out of this chair and slid over Grizzly's desk. Grizzly slowly walked past Ryan and stood in front of the tall creature. I told you to stay back, Grizzly said as he pulled the tall monster by the horn with a cigarette in his mouth. Sorry, Grizz, I just wanted to meet the new guy, he said with warmth but without any expression on his lizard-like face. Sup, newbie, the name is Aragon. He waved as the much shorter man still had him by a horn. You know the effect you have on people, he shook Aragon playfully by a horn as he spoke. Ryan then scanned the creature, who was wearing stained sweatpants and old Crocs with claws protruding. When Ryan saw that these two were standing in front of the door, he abandoned his escape plans. Hello, Aragon, I am Ryan, his voice cracked a little. See, I told you I wouldn't scare him off, Aragon said. Grizzly let go of his horn, and Aragon stood at his full height, and Ryan properly saw the very muscular beast. Aragon was monstrous in every sense of the word, but sounded friendly, which confused Ryan. The older man looked at Aragon and said, You just got lucky. Grizzly looked at Ryan and put his hand on the anxious young man's shoulder. Aragon is a joker, but he isn't dangerous. Let's get to the ship. Chapter 2. Ryan followed Grizzly and Aragon to the airship hidden on the roof of the building. Femur. The skeleton ran toward Grizzly, bones clanking like a xylophone every step. He stood at attention and saluted. Yes, sir. The old man sighed while lighting another cigarette. Get the ship ready, and I need you to relax. We aren't at war. Understood, sir. He saluted again and clanked toward the ship. Why me? Grizzly whispered to himself as he followed. Aragon walked closer to Ryan, who was staring at the skeleton. The guildmaster is a necromancer. He makes deals with people to work for him after they die. The Draconian opened the door and let Ryan and the old man enter first. They do the everyday stuff so we can focus on being badasses. Ryan remained quiet. He tried and failed to keep his distance. The airship wasn't very big, and the sails had the same rose with blood-dripping picture from the front of the building. The ship took off from the building in a flash. Ryan nearly lost his balance, but Grizzly caught him. He pushed himself off the old man. After a few minutes, Grizzly said, I'm going below for a nap, Blue Leader. Take care of the kid. As he left, he gave the Draconian a small salute. Ryan stood rigidly next to the railing, looking down at the ground. He could feel the vibrations of Aragon's footsteps getting closer to him. The Draconian saw the young man's white knuckles on the railing. Do you like video games? Ryan stayed quiet for a few seconds before he answered. I have never played. He feigned outrage with his expressionless face. Why? Fun is what a growing boy needs. Ryan kept quiet, and Aragon walked a little closer. Do you want to try? We still have a few hours until we hit land. Ryan wanted to protest, but the sight of Aragon destroyed the thought. Aragon held out a handheld system. This will help you to relax. He looked at the console and relented. How does it work? Aragon sat down on the railing to go down low enough to teach Ryan how to play. Finally, he speaks. They played racing games for about an hour. Aragon won every single race until he crashed at the end of the final one. Yes. Ryan had a big smile on his face for a second and punched the air, but he immediately pulled back. Good job, Ryan, it seems that you have a real talent for video games. He tried to pat Ryan's back. He moved away from Aragon's touch. Thank you, that was fun. Ryan's voice was back to monotone. He turned the game off and handed it back to Aragon. What is the guild like? I think it is better if you see that for yourself. It is very different from what you seem to be used to. Ryan bolted to his feet and faced Aragon with anger in his eyes. What is that supposed to mean? Aragon held up his hands. You are very serious, and you felt guilty for enjoying video games. Your life must have been hell. Ryan looked down. Yes, hell. I tell you what, if anyone wants to punish you for having fun, I promise they have to go through me first. He locked eyes with Aragon. Why? The Draconian shrugged and said, why not? Ryan thought about the words he had just heard. Thank you, you are not as scary as you seem. I know. There was sadness in Aragon's voice. It was eerie because his expression remained the same. Ryan then asked, what other games are there? Aragon perked up and said, you have much to learn, Padawan. He pulled out the game system and gave it to Ryan again. Ryan then proceeded to lose every single game. After a few hours of losing, Ryan became bored and put the system away. He sat with his back to the railing with his eyes closed. He tried to sleep for about 2 hours, but it refused to come. Just as it felt like he would drift away, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Aragon said after Ryan opened his eyes, look over there. Ryan saw a floating island directly in front of them. The island had high walls, like a castle that could withstand sieges. Isn't she a beauty? Aragon said happily with his expressionless face. How does it fly? I have no idea. You will have to ask the Baron. He then turned from Ryan and stood at attention. Aragon took a deep breath and yelled, Femur. The skeleton clinked and clanked to Aragon and saluted. Yes, sir, at your service. Aragon saluted back at the skeleton. Wake Grizzly, and tell him we will land shortly. Understood, sir. He saluted again and clanked away. So, any questions before we hit landfall? Aragon leaned over the railing and looked at the island. Is everyone like you? What do you mean by that? Aragon mimicked Ryan's monotone. Ryan's voice sounded normal for once. Like dragons and skeletons? I am a Draconian, and I am the only one. The Skellies, on the other hand, are everywhere. Ryan wanted to give Aragon comforting words, but he had none. To his surprise, he felt shame. I do have some friends for you to meet. Ryan felt relief at Aragon's change of subject. He leaned in close and whispered, looking over Ryan's shoulder, I would like to introduce you to Grizzly's girlfriend. She is not my girlfriend. Grizzly was right behind Ryan. The young man almost jumped at Grizzly's quiet movement. Not with that attitude. The old man rolled his eyes and looked for his lighter, but couldn't find it. He cleared his throat and gave Aragon a look. The Draconian licked his finger and, with a snap, created a small flame. As he lit his cigarette, Grizzly looked at Ryan. Aragon is referring to Ina, who owns a tavern. Trying to process the new information, Ryan asked, "So Ina isn't your girlfriend?" Grizzly started coughing and almost dropped his cigarette. Aragon started laughing, and Grizzly said, "Not you too." Between laughs, Aragon said, "The tavern has a small house connected, but just the three of us are gonna stay there." Ryan felt slightly overloaded by the way these two just threw around information. As the ship got ready to dock, Grizzly called for Femur again. He heard the familiar clanking. "Yes, sir, at your service. When we land, get the ship cleaned and let Alexander know Ryan is here." With another salute, Femur clanked away to perform his duties. As they drew closer to the dock area, Ryan mostly saw humans, but sprinkled in the group were skeletons and some orcs. Ryan felt sweat drip down the back of his neck. As they landed, orcs with their massive strength pulled the ship. The orcs heaved loudly as they anchored the ship. The same orcs placed the gangway between the ship and the dock. A massive orc with an eye patch walked onto the deck and stopped directly in front of Grizzly. "Do you have anything to declare, old man?" The two were facing off, and Ryan feared a fight would break out. The orc smiled, and this brought attention to his large tusks jutting up from his bottom lip. "I declare that you owe me a drink." The orc started laughing and shook Grizzly's hand. "You always know how to bring 'em in, how do you do it?" Grizzly shrugged, "I'm a people person." The smiling orc turns to Ryan, who fought to retain eye contact. "The name is Grawl, I'm part Odegaard." Ryan looked at his outstretched hand and hesitantly shook it. "Ryan. A man o' few words, welcome to de Bloodrose." He nodded at Ryan. For a second, he was sure that Grawl bared his teeth at Aragon. Grizzly led them through the busy cobblestone streets to the tavern called the Broken Tusk. Chapter 3. Grizzly led them through the cobblestone streets. The humans and orcs both gave friendly greetings to the old man. Ryan noticed how the orcs kept their distance from Aragon. The humans seemed fond of the blue draconian, though. Aragon didn't seem to notice or didn't care, Ryan wasn't sure which. Grizzly lit a cigarette and looked at Ryan. "Ryan, do you mind sharing a room with Aragon?" Ryan answered after a moment's thought. "I don't mind as long as there is enough room for me." Grizzly smiled and pointed to Aragon. "He does take up a lot of space, doesn't he? It's these sweatpants, they make me look hippie." The Draconian's expressionless face and his playful voice were something he would need to get used to. He looked with slitted eyes at Ryan. "It is no problemo, Ryan, our room is huge, and you travel light." He tried to pat Ryan on the back, but he dodged. They walked in silence until they reached the tavern. It was mid-afternoon, and the tavern was relatively empty. A few skeleton employees were serving some humans and orcs. When the orcs spotted the group, they stopped their loud conversation, and they then paid and left without a word. There was a voice yelling behind the bar, "Aragon, is that you?" A very tall woman with slightly green skin and a mop of very long, gray, streaked hair stood up. She was nearly at Aragon's eye level. She slapped him on the shoulder. "How is my favorite bouncer?" "You know, doing my best while being the prettiest lizard I know." She looked down at Ryan. "How was the trip?" He kept quiet. She continued as if this did not bother her. "I know my boys can be a handful." Aragon looked around and asked for someone named Belle. Ina pointed to the kitchen, and he left with a wave to Ryan. Ryan was just too late with his wave because he was too busy staring at this giantess. He noticed she had a single small tusk and a small scar on her lip, which must be where the name of the tavern originated from. After a long few seconds, Ryan's legs finally let him sit down. She looked at Grizzly as if asking him a question, and the old man just shrugged. He lit a cigarette, and an ashtray was in front of him in a heartbeat. "Thanks, Ina, you are the best." She smiled at him as he flicked ash in the ashtray. "Don't you forget it, old man." Ryan kept staring at her. She then brought her attention back to Ryan. Is it your first time seeing a half-orc? She had a warm tone, and Ryan shook his head. With a warm smile, she sat down on a stool so they could be at eye level. Ryan moved his stool back. She ignored his action and spoke kindly. I know I am just a barmaid in a small tavern, but for what it is worth, you can trust these two clowns. She leaned in close to a stiff Ryan, especially the old guy. Grizzly coughed. It seems like I am the butt of the jokes today. She rolled her eyes and brought out some drinks for them. As she gave Grizzly his drink, she leaned close. How hard did you have to work to get him here? No problems whatsoever. Ina tapped on the counter a few times as she thought about Grizzly's words. That bad, huh? She looked at Ryan. If you want, I could beat this old man's ass. After that comment, she winked at Grizzly, and he gave her another warm smile. Ryan sat rigidly in his chair, his face blank. He didn't take a sip of his drink. She then looked at Ryan and lost all pretenses of being overly warm. So, Ryan, when a familiar clanking made her stop in her tracks as Femur barged in. He saluted again. Mr. Ryan, the guildmaster wishes to speak with you. With a gulp, Ryan got up and followed the skeleton. As Ryan walked around the corner, he heard Ina say to Grizzly, I wish I could get my hands on those bastards. This was followed by what sounded like a heavy fist hitting a bar counter. As Ryan sat stiffly at the bar, Aragon walked to the kitchen. He was humming to himself. He couldn't wait to tell Belle that he had made a new friend. He walked into the kitchen and saw her standing over a large pot. He weaved around the skeletons, prepping ingredients. He placed his hand in one of the flames, and there was no effect. If you can't stand the heat. The Draconian was trying to get a reaction from the redhead. Could you please not, Aragon? I am having a day. The normally tall and strong young woman was hunched as if her life force had been taken from her. She kept her head down while slowly stirring. What's wrong, Bea? The Draconian walked closer to her. I did it, I talked to him about how I feel. She finally turned around, and tears were streaming down her face. Aragon very carefully asked, what did Grizzly say? He was flattered. She had a scowl on her face. She then said in an exaggerated tone, but I am just a kid and he's an old man. She squeezed her wooden spoon so hard that it cracked. I have seen the way he looks at Ina. She started sobbing as she broke the spoon. She dropped the spoon and covered her face with her hands. Why doesn't he want to look at me? Aragon knelt on one knee and was almost at her eye level. He placed a hand on her shoulder and pulled her in for a hug. It's not your fault, Bea, and it isn't his fault either. Aragon held her as she cried. He always felt so warm. Why can't you always be like this, Blue? She asked as the tears started dying down. A serious dragon makes people nervous, but I will always make an exception for you, Bea. He kept hugging her until she calmed down. Her tears stopped, and she let go of her big friend and went back to her work. How do you feel? Better, thanks. A blush started up her neck. Thank you, Blue, I needed that. He stood up and started eating from the pot. What are friends for? Belle hit his hand with a spoon, and he pulled it back in mock pain. She started laughing and said, tell the others that lunch is ready. Before I leave, the new guy, his name is Ryan, try to be nice. She crossed her arms. I am always nice, Blue Man. Forgive me, Your Highness. He did a deep bow. Could you be nicer than normal to the new guy? He had it rough. If you put it that way, she trailed off and nodded after a few seconds. Ryan walked down a very long and straight hallway. There were torches on both sides that made all the shadows dance on the walls. What caught Ryan's attention were many paintings of people, orcs and skeletons in mundane situations. His favorite was a diner with a skeleton working behind the counter, and a human and two orcs were sitting down. Ryan took a deep breath as Femur saluted and clanked away. He entered through the door that says Guildmaster. The man he saw sitting at the massive desk had a skeleton show Ryan to a large chair in front of him. "Welcome, Ryan, I hope your tour has been fruitful?" He held up his hand, and a skeleton walked up to Ryan. "Sir, would you like some tea?" Before Ryan could react, he had a cup of tea in his hands. "Thank you." He then gave the man behind the desk a proper look. He wore a very sleek black suit with a black shirt and red tie. He was a pale man with very long black hair and fangs. Just as Ryan had the thought to toss his tea and run, the figure spoke. "You need not be afraid, I make it my priority not to harm those in my care." His voice was deep and calm. "Why should I believe you?" Ryan was focusing on every minuscule movement the guildmaster made. He put his untouched tea on the floor while never looking away. "You shouldn't." He smiled, flashing his fangs. "I am a vampire, but you do know that we of the monstrous races are not always heartless." Ryan froze and grabbed hold of the armrests. "How should I know that?" For a moment, he didn't want to maintain eye contact. "They sent you to kill many of my kin, did you not see the fear in their eyes?" Ryan's whole body was tense, and he quickly grabbed hold of his dagger. "Do you want revenge? Is that why no one said you were a monster?" "No, I believe that revenge should be reserved for those who are irredeemable, and you fall short of that." The vampire stood up and walked around his desk, and faced Ryan. He ignored Ryan's dagger as he stood before him. "Forgive my rudeness," he placed his right hand on his chest. "I am Baron Alexander Draconovich, and I am a vampire, and in my past, I was a creature of the night." He then bowed. "I promise, on my honor as a baron and master of this guild, that I shall not judge nor punish you." At the vampire's sincerity, Ryan could only force out a weak, "Thank you." The vampire walked back to his desk. "Did you know that not all enjoy the privilege of freedom?" "What do you mean?" "Before I came here, I and all of those that crossed over were bound by our fate to be no better than beasts." He took a look around his office. "Here we enjoy the same freedom as you." He then looked Ryan in the eye. "The freedom to be good, evil, or to be redeemed." The vampire paused as Ryan decided to speak. "Is that why you run the Blood Rose?" "No, I manage the Blood Rose because I truly care for this world and all those that reside in it." "Do you expect me to believe you? What if I had chosen one of the other guilds?" "Then you would be there." Ryan froze at his answer. "Just as with the Silver Tongues, you would have to change part of yourself to belong." Ryan stood up and lost his monotone. "Really? How would I have to change?" Alexander was just as calm as when Ryan entered. He pointed to a skeleton, and Ryan received another cup of tea. "They do each have cultural or gender expectations for you to follow." Ryan had a cup of tea in one hand and his dagger in the other. He didn't like the softness in Alexander's eyes. "Don't look at me like that. You are welcome here, Ryan, and you are welcome as you are." "Why do you believe in me?" Ryan asked as he put away his dagger and sat back down. "I don't, it is Grizzly who does, and it seems that I now know why." He gave Ryan a fanged smile. Chapter 4 Alexander took out his pocket watch and checked the time. "Have you eaten yet?" Ryan just shook his head. "Come, I shall escort you." Alexander then walked out of his office and waited for the young man to follow. As Alexander walked with Ryan, he not only greeted everyone, but also greeted them by name. Ryan kept an eye on the vampire, his skeleton assistant, who would take notes of all the complaints and concerns of the inhabitants. He led Ryan back to the Broken Tusk. Alexander opened the door and let Ryan enter first. The tavern was packed with a mix of orcs and humans. The majority of servers were skeletons. As they moved further in, Alexander leaned close to Ryan. "Do you see the girl with the red hair?" Ryan saw a very friendly-looking girl walking around and offering the patrons bowls of stew. She wore a simple white tank top, jeans, and had a stained apron. The only trait that stood out was how pretty she was. He wasn't about to admit that to Alexander. Yes, sir, what should I be looking for? Her eyes are red. Ryan nodded as he listened. For what reasons could that child's eyes be red? She has been cooking. There are ingredients that could irritate her eyes, sir? This stew contains no onions. Does that not change the reason for her tears? Alexander flashed a fanged smile and left for the bar before Ryan could reply. Ryan walked over to the only empty table. He pondered on the guild master's words as he sat down. He was jolted out of his trance by the same red-headed girl. Welcome, newcomer. She had a very friendly tone. Would you like some stew? Her smile didn't meet her eyes, and against his better judgment, he spoke. Are you well, miss? They were both surprised by his question. She immediately replied, maybe a bit too quickly, yes, why wouldn't I be? Ryan wanted to be quiet, but he had already started this conversation. You look like you have been crying. She grabbed hold of the table as she leaned forward. I have been cooking for hours. She leaned further to the point that she was in his face. Didn't you know that onions burn your eyes? She held onto the corner of the table so hard that it started to crack. There are no onions in this stew. She let go of the table and shot up. How do you know that? He didn't want to give Alexander up, so he decided to leave that out. I can see you have been crying. After scanning the tavern, he moved his hair to reveal a short pointed ear. He decided to share with her his half-elven heritage, not knowing how she would react. A secret for a secret. She started laughing at his overly serious display. I already knew that, we all do. Ryan suddenly felt his face catch on fire. The girl saw his embarrassment and decided that it was time to change the subject. It seems like we haven't been properly introduced. I am Isabel Thompson, but everyone calls me Belle. She held out her hand. He took it while staring at his plate. My name is Ryan, and it seems I have embarrassed myself. Don't worry about it. He saw that she had a warm smile when he finally looked up. In your own strange way, you made me feel better. She slapped him on the shoulder so hard that his chair slid to the side. In an instant, the friendly but awkward man disappeared, and a wary killer took his place. Oh my God, I am sorry. She tried to pat his shoulder, but he moved the stool back so she couldn't reach him. Ryan had no expression on his face. He studied her every move. He lifted his spoon and placed it in the bowl, and slid it to the side very slowly. His eyes never left her. Belle stood there for a moment, awkwardly stuttered an apology, and left. When the redhead was out of sight, Ryan allowed himself to rub his aching shoulder. He then brought the bowl back and started eating. It tasted good. He finished his meal in silence. He heard heavy footsteps and looked back. It was Ina. His chest tightened as she came closer. I see you met Belle. She sat down across from him, and he moved his bowl away again. So, how was your conversation? We don't get along. She gave him a warm smile. Very few people get along from the start. She motioned for a skeleton to bring Ryan another plate of stew. You have to reply to connect. He took the plate and took another bite. For a moment, Ryan wondered if he should enter a conversation. As the tall woman looked at him expectantly, he relented. Ryan decided to ask, why do the orcs avoid Aragon? Her eyes went wide at his question, and then softened as she smiled. I don't know, and if you ask the greenskins, they would tell you the same thing. She scratched her head for a second and seemed to find an answer. It is like how a rabbit is scared of a dog, all they know it is a good idea. At this analogy, Ryan had a small smile and spoke without thinking. I can see why Grizzly likes you. As he spoke, he realized what he had done. He slapped his forehead and cringed so hard at his mistake. She roared with laughter at his words and pounded on the table. Ryan wished he could run off the side of the floating island. After she calmed down, she spoke softly. We have been dating for the last 6 months, and Grizzly wants us to be sure before we tell everyone. Ryan looked at her with a frown and lost his monotone. When Aragon talked about you, he called you Grizzly's girlfriend, so he either suspects or knows. With her warm smile, she replied, I'm sure everybody knows, Grizzly is a grumpy old man and is always nice to me. For the first time, Ryan laughed a little. Ina leaned forward. Look, Ryan, I heard what happened to you. She tried to place her hand on his arm, but he pulled back. Those bastards. Her voice deepened to a growl. If they are stupid enough to get close, I will rip their guts out. In her anger, she grabbed the edge of the table and tore a piece off and crushed it in her large hand. To the fearful Ryan, it seemed as if she had grown 2 sizes. I'm sorry, I just get so worked up if children are hurt. She looked genuinely embarrassed. Thank you, no one has ever been mad for me before. Just as the tears formed, she stood up and left. Ryan kept eating until his bowl was empty for the 3rd time. When he finished, Grizzly called him over. Aragon was next to him. Aragon is going to take you to your new room. Ryan just nodded at the old man's words and followed Aragon. They walked out the back of the tavern, and they walked past the kitchen. Ryan and Belle's eyes met for a second. She looked away, and Ryan just kept walking. As they made their way out the back, Ryan saw a small 2-story house. They entered the house that smelled of stale cigarette smoke. Ryan noticed some photos on the fireplace of a slightly younger Grizzly and Aragon. On the 2nd floor, on one door, was a warning label. It read, Aragon's room. Keep away from my hoard. The absurdity made Ryan smile unconsciously. The room itself was strangely normal. There were 2 beds, one was enormous and the other was a single bed. On one shelf, there was a TV with many games and a few different game systems. The only form of decoration was a book with a blue dragon and the name Aragon. Ryan looked at Aragon and asked, How do you and this book have the same name? The blue draconian didn't look up from his game. Grizzly found that a few years ago. Before that, my name was Blue. Aragon started up a game system and started playing a fighting game. Did you not have a name? I do, but you guys can't pronounce it. He then started making strange roaring sounds. You wanna try? You make a fair point. Is that book any good? Aragon shrugged. Don't know, I don't read. Ryan decided to watch Aragon play. Aragon wasn't going to let that happen, he gave the 2nd controller to him. Ryan then tried to play with the Draconian. He lost every single fight and didn't get to hit Aragon's character once. After about half an hour of playing, the phone rang. Aragon answered, Hello. After a few seconds of listening, he said, Okay, see you later, I love you. Who was that? Grizzly, he has a mission for us, and it seems to be urgent. Chapter 5 Belle got a call from Ina. She was quiet for a moment and answered her phone. Hi Ina, what's up? She tried her best to sound friendly, but Ina never let her know if she failed. Hi, Belle, can I ask you a favor? What do you need, boss? Grizzly and the boys need one more person to help on a mission. What is the mission? I'm not sure yet, but it does have something to do with the dwarves. Belle took a deep breath. She tried her best to keep the emotions from her voice. I'm in, when do we meet? In 2 hours, Grizzly will give the briefing at the bar. Goodbye, thanks for the heads up. Bye, and how is your gear? Do you need anything? My gear is good, thanks. Belle put the phone down and started bawling again. Why was Ina always so thoughtful? It was impossible to hate her. After a few minutes, she pulled herself together. She got dressed and made her way to the Broken Tusk. She entered from the kitchen and looked at the almost empty tavern. Belle saw Ryan sitting at the bar. He was staring ahead. He refused to acknowledge anyone who tried to speak to him. She felt a cold hand grab her heart as she remembered her mistake. She needed to make things right. She had practiced her apology multiple times in the mirror. She thought she was ready. Just then, Aragon entered and sat next to Ryan. She watched as he began speaking to the unresponsive Ryan. At the sight of her blue friend, she gathered her courage. "Hello, Aragon." Aragon held out his fist for Belle to bump. After a brief pause, "Hello, Ryan." Ryan didn't acknowledge her. She took a deep breath, moved, and spoke to his back. She looked down at her feet. "I am really sorry about earlier. I am so used to being around Aragon, and I forget how fragile." Ryan flew out of his chair so quickly and quietly that even Aragon couldn't react in time. He was in her face, looking through her, and the way he spoke without emotion was the most frightening part. "I am not fragile." The girl felt a lump form in her throat from this almost violent display. She looked down and saw his clenched fists. Just as her knees buckled, Aragon stepped in. "Do you know what Belle is best known for?" He slowly stepped in between the two humans, putting her foot in her mouth and trying to walk home. Ryan looked up at Aragon and said, "Fine." His attention moved to an anxious Belle. "Don't ever hit me that hard again." Belle felt a great weight lifted from her as the young man sat back down. "I am really sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise." Ryan stayed quiet, and Aragon quipped, "Now that we have kissed and made up, what do you think the mission will be?" Aragon noticed the blush creep up Ryan's neck. He started chuckling. "What are you laughing at?" Belle asked. "You wouldn't get it." After a few minutes of silence, Grizzly and Ina entered. The old man looked over to Ryan. "I know this is short notice, and you have every right to sit this out." At Ryan's silence, he continued. "In the dwarven city of Goldhaven, they have reports of cursed dwarves." This seemed to pique Ryan's interest as Grizzly continued. "They are cursed to be irrational and bloodthirsty, and if a dwarf kills them, that curse is then transferred." As Grizzly spoke, he accidentally crushed his cigarette. "This is important to me, and you don't have to join us, Ryan." "How many are there?" The old man seemed surprised by Ryan's question. "From the reports I received, there are 2, but it is always a good idea to expect more." "I'm in." Ina chose this moment to speak. "Are you sure you can always sit this one out and get some rest first?" She received a small smile from Ryan. "You gave me a choice, that is why I am going." The other 2 agreed to Grizzly's request. Grizzly and Ina then shared a look and shifted their attention to Aragon. "The king also asked for you by name, Aragon. Do you know why?" He lit another cigarette and raised an eyebrow at the Draconian. "I have no idea what you are talking about." His cracking voice undercut his expressionless face. Ina then took out a big jar with a seal of a crossed hammer and axe. "You took that from the king, and they never forget grudges." Aragon squirmed in his seat. It was as if this massive creature was shrinking before Ryan. Anyone could have taken that mead. Ina turned it around, and on the back was etched, "To Ina, happy birthday, love Aragon." Grizzly then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, Ina is a priestess of the Lara, and she is going to negotiate a lesser punishment for you." Aragon gulped. "Do I have to go?" Ryan felt anger rise in his chest. Just as he wanted to defend his friend, Ina motioned for him to sit down. She gave him a smile and a wink. He understood the hint and sat down to listen. Ina then stood at her full height and put her hand on Aragon's shoulder. "You have to, don't worry, if they get angry, I will get angry." To Ryan's surprise, this line calmed Aragon down. "Good, everyone get packed and we meet on the ship in 30. Grizzly left, and Ina left with one piece of advice. "Pack warm, kids, we are going south." The flight was mostly uneventful, except for the fact that the airship was too small for the emotions. Ryan regretted his choice to come. Belle sat to the side, and Aragon tried to cheer her up. Grizzly and Ina were being very romantic, they thought no one else could see. These people made Ryan roll his eyes. He then decided to go above deck and held tight to his heavy jacket. He could finally relax, even though the frigid winds were beating down on him. He heard a familiar clanking. "Sir, why are you out here?" Ryan didn't look back. "I just need to be alone." "Why, sir?" Ryan kept quiet for a few minutes. "I don't know." "Sir, when you feel you know, please go below deck and warm up." Femur clanked away. Ryan looked back at the skeleton and didn't know if that was dumb or profound. Ryan went below deck and saw the scene differently. Grizzly and Ina were dating, and they wanted alone time, but decided to help the dwarves and Aragon. Belle was sad and hurt him, but she was still here. Aragon was in potentially a lot of trouble, and he was here. Maybe they weren't so bad. As the ship landed, there was a small party of dwarves to meet them. They were short and broad with very thick, braided beards and hair. Grizzly broke off to speak to them. He and the dwarves spoke in a guttural language for a minute. They were then escorted to a mountain close by. There was a gate that had many carvings of dwarves in a line that led to the mountain. As they entered, they were met by the Dwarven King. The Dwarven King had 4 guards with him. He was dressed similarly to his men with his braided beard and full armor. The only difference was a simple crown with a big ruby on his head. The Draconian had no facial expressions, but Ryan saw him wringing his massive hands behind his back. The king finally spoke. He had a very thick accent, and Ryan had to focus on his words. "Welcome to the Kingdom of Goldhaven." He bowed to them. "I know you are here for the mission, but first we must go to the Great Hall." The king's head only reached Aragon's waist. He looked at the group. "You 4 go to the main entrance." He then looked up at Aragon. "I need you to come with me." Ryan looked around and saw a smile on Grizzly and Ina's faces. Belle finally spoke. "What is going on?" The old man led them to the entrance hall. Grizzly lit another cigarette and started laughing. "Don't worry, it is a good thing, and it would be better if I don't spoil it." Calling it a great hall was an understatement. The walls were not only adorned by jewels of all colors, there were also murals of dwarves mining and fighting against great beasts. Ryan also saw a mural where a taller figure with a black jacket fought with what looked like a gun. He looked forward and saw thousands of dwarves. Many were standing around a massive stage where a female dwarf sat, and the rest were on pavilions cut into the side of the stone. Another fixture on the stage was a massive forge and an anvil. After about an hour, the king walked in with Aragon behind him. The Draconian was still bare-chested as always, but he wore armor pants and steel boots. The crowd started cheering. Grizzly had made sure that the crew was close to the stage. The king took his hammer and hit a piece of iron a few times so hard that the edge started to glow. He threw the piece of metal into the forge, and it roared to life. After a while, when the heat satisfied the king, he held up his hammer. The crowd went silent. Grizzly translated for Ryan and Belle. "Do you remember when the queen was wounded?" The crowd roared as the king started hammering a piece of metal that he placed in the forge. "My sworn brother, Grizzly, dug her out with his bare hands." The king pointed his hammer at the old man and gave him a nod as the crowd roared again. "My wife's injuries were too extensive for our healers to cure." The crowd roared again as he hammered the metal. "The noble Draconian then offered his magic to save her." The roars continued, and the king kept beating the metal. Little did I know what value his gift had. He kept hammering, and the crowd just kept roaring. We had feared him, but he came with humility to my wife and healed her without any parley. He kept hammering. After they had left, I had heard news, my wife was with child. More hammering. He whom we had treated as a beast saved my family and, by extension, myself. He then picked up a massive golden bracer. With his bare hands, he placed a ruby on the molten metal and placed his creation on the bracer. "With this gift, I call Aragon my brother." The crowd kept roaring. "Where he mines, I mine." The crowd kept going. "Where he fights, I fight." The crowd somehow roared louder. "Where he dies, I die." With his last words, he raised his hammer again, and the hall went quiet. Are there any among you who wish to test my fury? The hall remained quiet. He walked over to Aragorn and said, Kneel. Aragorn did and was still taller than the king. I can never repay you, but I shall dedicate my life to come as close as I can. He placed the bracer on his left arm and raised it. The crowd started chanting. Brother! 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 The queen stood up, and the crowd went silent again. She walked up to him and she took his right hand and placed a ring with a beautiful emerald on his finger. She kissed him on the cheek and yelled, He is my brother too. The crowd cheered again. She then turned and brought her baby and said, He is named Aragorn after his savior. Will you hold him? The Draconian hesitated and held out his hands. The baby didn't scream at seeing him, he was laughing and cooing as babies do. He held out a clawed hand for the baby, and he grabbed onto Aragorn's blue, scaled finger. He gave the baby back to the queen. She then asked loudly, Would you do us the honor of being his godfather? They looked at him expectantly. All he could do was nod. The king and queen cheered, and this caused a roar to go through the crowd once again. Aragorn was led off the stage and met with the crew. Aragorn walked straight to Grizzly and said, You said I was in trouble for the mead. You always mess with me, I had to pay back the favor. Aragorn looked at Ina, So, why did you really come? The king asked me to bless young Aragorn. Aragorn was flung back as Belle hugged him, Why didn't you tell me? It must have slipped my mind. Ryan then decided to speak up, It seems like something too important to slip your mind. Belle looked at Ryan. He always does this, he helps people and just goes on his way. Ryan nodded as he stared at Aragorn. Ina walked to the stage. Chapter 6 As Aragorn left the stage, it was Ina's turn to shine. As a priestess of the Lara, she left to bless the new baby. The crowd went silent as if they hadn't been roaring a few minutes prior. At the end of the ceremony, the crew were taken to a massive sealed door by the king himself. The dwarves had constructed a small camp outside the door. I thank you for your help, good luck. He bowed, and Grizzly bowed back. The dwarves left, and Grizzly fixed his attention on the crew. Ryan, you are new to the group, so we need to know what everyone can do. Ryan took a deep breath. I am a half-elf, and I have the shadow ability. In her confusion, Belle asked, What is that? It means I can disappear in peripheral vision. Would you like a demonstration? She gave a quick nod. He faced her and ordered, Look ahead and try to follow my actions. She did as instructed and watched as he walked toward her. One moment, he was passing on her right, and she focused on his presence, but it disappeared. It was as if he teleported. She thought back to the bar end. Realized how much he held back. Ryan felt her tremble and moved next to Grizzly. Aragorn moved next to Ryan after giving a glance at his friend. Dude, that was slick. I'm next, I can use healing magic, and I have nature's knives. He held up his claws for Ryan to see. He scratched the wall and left deep scars in the rock. Ryan was surprised by the ease he had dug trenches in the wall. Don't worry, I never use these on friends. His tone was warm, but Ryan was still cautious of the Draconian. Ryan's gaze then fell on Belle. I am good with my sword and shield. He stared blankly at her. Grizzly came to her defense. If she couldn't handle herself, she wouldn't be here. The old man smiled at her, and Ryan saw her blush and look away. Ryan didn't like that. Grizzly started taking off his leather jacket. My turn. He looked over at Ryan. Do you remember when I broke your dagger? As he removed his jacket, Ryan saw a desiccated arm up to Grizzly's elbow. Ryan didn't show a reaction on his face, but he was surprised by the old man's mummified arm. He took out a large black revolver from his hip. I found this thing a few decades ago, and it turned out to be cursed. Ryan stared at the weapon. Guns were obsolete, and yet Grizzly had one. Cursed? How? Grizzly lit another cigarette. It reloads by using my life force, and I get a random amount of bullets. He placed it back into its holster. Also, I can't use any other weapons, otherwise they get destroyed. Ryan thought back to their first meeting. Ryan nodded. Aragon decided to chip in at that moment. I call it blackjack. Grizzly groaned. Stop calling it that. He then looked back at Ryan. How do you feel about this team? What is my position? Kid, I asked you a question. I don't know. Grizzly took a long drag and motioned for Ryan to follow him away from the team. Look, Ryan, I think it might be for the best if you wait for us here. No. Why do you want to come with us so badly? He was trying to keep his monotone, but he failed. Because I need to do this. Grizzly saw Ryan's balled fists and decided to relent. Fine, but while we are in there, I need you to focus on the team. Understood, sir. Don't call me that. Grizzly led him back to the team. We had a talk, and Ryan will be the tail. Their plan seemed simple. Aragon took point because he could see in the dark. Grizzly and Bell were in the middle, and Ryan was at the back as a lookout. Ryan felt uncertain about what he would contribute. After an hour, they were ready to enter. Everyone checked their gear. They were ready to move. The dwarves had sealed the area to keep the cursed dwarves in. It was dark and quiet. Ryan could hear banging in the distance. As they explored the dark maze, he heard breathing close by. Ryan was just in time with a warning. Ahead to the left. Just as Aragon reacted, a small figure leapt at him. The Draconian caught the blade of the axe in his hand and disarmed his opponent. Belle leapt forward and knocked him back with her shield. She then lunged forward and stabbed him in the chest. The second enemy was on the opposite end of the hall. He tried to go for Grizzly's back. Ryan noticed before he got too close. Grizzly, behind you. Grizzly spun much faster than Ryan, though he could. He slapped the hammer away, and it turned into smoke. He punched the dwarf so hard that he flew and hit the back wall. He dove onto the dwarf and started punching its face into the ground until it stopped twitching. As the two cursed dwarves were dispatched, Grizzly stood up. Look around for anything, we don't know if there are more of them. Everyone started searching the dark, barren rooms. As Ryan looked around, he spotted a sconce that was askew. As he looked around, he pushed on it. A secret door opened close to him with a screech. There were two hooded figures. Their faces were obscured, but it felt like they locked eyes with Ryan. With no hesitation, one lifted their hand, and a bolt of fire flew directly toward him. It was as if time slowed down for Ryan. A half-smile crossed his face as he accepted his fate. Just as the fire started burning his face, he saw a head of red hair appear as if by magic. She barely made it in time as the explosion knocked them both back. The bolt destroyed her shield. As Ryan came to his senses, he looked at his savior. Half of her face and torso were burned entirely black. He could smell her burnt flesh, and she looked at him with her ruined face. She whispered, "You okay?" She coughed a few times and her eye closed. He felt intense anger. He stood up, and he knew what to do. "B." Aragon yelled as his voice turned into an animalistic roar. They took off at full speed. Aragon moved so fast he almost turned into a blur. He grabbed the figure by the neck and barreled him into a wall. He bit down on his neck and the enemy and tore out his throat. The enemy tried to scream in pain as blood sprayed everywhere. Just as the second figure was about to attack Aragon, he was struck in the shoulder by a thrown dagger. The pain in his ruined shoulder made him turn. What he saw was a stone-faced Ryan who jumped and delivered a knee to his chest, knocking the wind from him. The figure's back hit the wall. He tried to stab Ryan. He was ready, he caught the arm and wrenched it to the side. Ryan struck upwards and shattered his elbow with a crunch. With a spin, he elbowed the figure in the jaw, and with a swift back kick, he doubled over. He grabbed the figure by the hood and pulled him close. He tore his dagger from the figure's shoulder. He stabbed him in the neck and threw his corpse to the floor. At the moment the attackers were dispatched, both men ran to Belle. Grizzly was there. He had stood guard over her as the others dispatched the enemies. Eragon took a deep breath and looked at Ryan. This won't be pretty. The scales on his back started to glow as the magic started to gather. He looked over at the two men just before he placed his hands on her. You need two to hold her down. Both men nodded. Ryan held her shoulders, and Grizzly grabbed her legs. He grabbed onto her hands, and the blue magic forced its way into her. Glowing blue streaks forced their way through her veins. Steam started rising, and the men felt extreme heat emanating from her body. The heat got so intense that Ryan almost wanted to let go. They smelled the scent of burning flesh anew. Her face healed first, and her socket bubbled as a new eye formed. She then woke up. She started bucking as her face and torso began healing. Ryan had no choice but to fight her as her burns receded. The glow from Eragon intensified as he forced her to heal. No matter how much it hurt her, Eragon knew he couldn't stop. He needed to save his friend. As Belle was screaming and crying, she saw a massive glowing beast. To others, it may seem as if it were getting ready to kill and devour prey. She knew better. Eragon was crying. After what felt like forever, he stopped and took her into his arms. There was still steam emanating from her. I'm sorry, B, but I had to. Small roars escaped his throat. Through groggy eyes, she saw Ryan. He had a strange look on his face. He didn't say anything, he just took off his jacket and placed it on her shoulders. Your clothes are burnt. She looked down and blushed a little. Eragon then stood up shakily and looked at Ryan. Are you okay? Don't worry about me. He looked down at her and scanned her for any injuries that Eragon missed. Look after Isabelle. Ryan was surprised by how perfectly she was healed on the outside. Grizzly stood up and slapped Eragon hard on the back. That was good stuff, Blue Leader. The old man placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, and Ryan didn't flinch or pull back. You did good too, Ryan. That level of quick thinking saves lives. Grizzly then gave the order, Eragon, pick up Belle, we are falling back. Grizzly scanned the surroundings and looked at Ryan. Ryan, as we fall back, I need you to take the rear and look after these two. Understood, sir. Ryan walked up to Belle as Eragon picked her up. You didn't have to do that, he said in his monotone. I owed you, she coughed. He looked her in the eye for a second and nodded. Thank you, Isabelle. He took his position at the back of the group. Ryan was extremely anxious the entire way back. He believed each and every shadow was an enemy. He started to relax the second the large door was sealed again. Grizzly left the group because he had to send his report to Alexander, and he missed Ina. Eragon stumbled into the base, and he put Belle gently on her bed. He fell to his knees and lay down on the floor next to her. Are you insane? You almost died. He tried to sound angry, but his voice cracked. He then heard a familiar monotone, I almost died, too. Good point. From the floor, Eragon gave a thumbs up. Ryan stepped over Eragon to get to Belle. How are you feeling? Do you have any lingering injuries? As he looked her over, she noticed the burns on his arm and gasped. Your arm, why didn't you tell us? I was low priority. I didn't know if Eragon had enough magic for both of us. Belle sat up straight and yelled, You aren't low priority, I wouldn't have saved you if you were. She immediately groaned, and Ryan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and laid her down. I meant that in terms of triage, he said, looking her deep in the eyes. You were badly injured, therefore high priority. Oh, I didn't know, I'm sorry. She blushed a little and looked away. It seems it is my turn to embarrass myself. Don't worry about that, he gave her a small smile. if you have any troubles, I will help you. Why? Belle asked softly. Because I owe you. Eragon forced himself to his feet and inspected Ryan's arm. What the hell, dude? How are you conscious? The Draconian hesitated for a second and asked, do you want me to heal you? Ryan held out his arm for Eragon while keeping his attention on Belle. Eragon healed Ryan's arm without a word. Belle winced as she remembered her own healing experience. Ryan kept looking at her without a flinch as steam rose from his arm. Sorry, dude, Eragon said as his magic ran out and he passed out. Belle tried to get out of bed, but Ryan held up his hand to stop her. His arm was mostly healed, but he still had a big scar. At the sight, she lay back on the bed. That still looks really bad. It could have been worse. He inspected his arm. He looked back at her. Thanks to you, I am not dead. He gave her a small smile and spoke without his monotone. Isabel, get some rest. She tightened his jacket and turned over in the bed to hide her smile. Ryan spent the next 10 minutes trying to get the Draconian on a bed. Chapter 7. Ryan fell into his bed. He was exhausted. He closed his eyes, hoping he could get some sleep. Darkness wasn't there to greet him. He was in a dark hallway. He checked his belt. His dagger was nowhere to be found. He heard a voice in the distance. Defect, where are you? To a normal person, it would sound like a mother searching for a lost child. Ryan's fear proved this wrong. He started running. The voice came closer. Why did you run, Defect? Don't you care about family? Ryan kept running. The voice started laughing as Ryan ran as hard as he could. A hooded figure then stood before Ryan. On his cloak, she had the symbol of the silver tongues. It was the comedy and tragedy masks, but both were smiling with their tongues hanging out. The figure held out her hand. She was getting ready to touch his cheek. It is time to go home, Defect. Ryan turned to run, but the walking figure easily caught up to him. He felt a hand on his shoulder. In a flash, he grabbed the wrist of the attacker and pinned them with his hand around their throat. With his teeth bared, he squeezed as hard as he could. The figure's face became visible, and its hair turned red. He looked around and saw the small base the dwarves had constructed. He realized that he had attacked Belle. He took his hand from Belle's throat and retreated from her. I'm sorry. I didn't. His voice faltered as he moved back and fell off the bed. Belle stood up and walked to him. Her voice was a bit hoarse as she spoke. Are you okay, Ryan? Ryan kept moving back until he hit the wall. She kept advancing and sat beside him. That dream looked like a bad one. He tried not to look at Belle, whose neck was red where he had strangled her. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't appear. You don't have to talk about it, let me help you to your bed. She held out a hand as she stood up. Are you not angry? Ryan felt slightly relieved that he found his voice. With a shaky hand, he took hers and stood. You looked so afraid. As he lay down, she took her place next to him. Grizzly and Eragon told me that you had a tough life, but I didn't realize how bad it was. She looked at him, but he was staring at the ceiling. I hurt you, I do not want to hurt anyone anymore. It's okay, Ryan, I forgive you. These words made him stare at her. Why? I could have killed you. You didn't. He looked back up at the ceiling. I don't understand, you saved me, and then you endured Eragon's magic, and then you forgive me when I attacked you. He rubbed his face. He realized that there were tears across his face. While still looking up, he spoke, for what it's worth, I am sorry. Belle sat up and looked at Ryan. This wasn't the first time that Eragon healed me. She lifted her left pant leg to reveal a foot that was a slightly different color. About 10 years ago, I went camping with my dad and Grizzly. She gave him a big smile. That was my first time meeting Eragon. I was so scared of him, but you know how cool he is. Ryan nodded unconsciously. I was horsing around, like all 12-year-olds do, and I found a goblin village. Ryan sat up. They hunted me. She took a deep breath. They managed to take my foot before the others got there. Ryan could see the fear in her eyes while she recounted the memory. They saved me, and Aragon barely had enough magic to heal my foot, and he passed out, and we were inseparable ever since. Ryan looked at her leg and then back up at her. I grew up in an orphanage. I have no idea who my father or mother were. He went quiet, and to his surprise, Belle hugged him and started crying quietly. He wanted to hug her back, but his arms fell to his sides. He felt he didn't deserve to hold her. He just let her hang on to him. It felt nice. After a few minutes, she got out of bed. Standing over his bed, she spoke. Try to get some sleep, Ryan. Thank you, Isabel, I will. He turned over, and he thankfully had no more dreams. Later, they were all woken up by Grizzly. As the group woke up, Grizzly sat down on the side of Aragon's bed. Good morning, team. I hope you all had a good night's rest. Belle and Ryan shared a look, and she received a small smile from him. We checked the area and there were no more cursed dwarves, but the bodies of those other two were gone. Aragon decided to speak up. What do you mean gone? He stood at his full height, which dwarfed Grizzly. Calm down, Blue Leader, the dwarves are investigating, and if they find anything, I will let you all know. The Draconian seemed satisfied and looked back at Belle and Ryan. How are you two? Ryan answered in his monotone. Fine. Belle answered at almost the same time. Good as new, Blue Man. Grizzly stood up and lit another cigarette. In 5 hours, the dwarves will have a banquet to thank the heroes who dispatched the cursed ones. He then looked at Ryan. It was because of you that we didn't have any casualties. It is okay to be proud of yourself. Ryan stood up and looked at Grizzly. Those other two were not dwarves. Maybe the Wizards Guild could help. The old man smiled, good thinking, but the dwarves don't love mages. Ryan frowned and looked down. He felt familiar shame. No need to feel down, you couldn't have known. I am glad you want to contribute. Grizzly patted the young man on the shoulder and left without another word. Chapter 8. The crew got ready for the banquet in silence. The one who broke that silence was Aragon. What do you think happened to those bodies? Ryan shrugged. If they disappeared, then that means there were more we didn't encounter. As Ryan tied his boot, his hand shook for a second. He took a deep breath and stood up. In that case, we need to be careful. We don't know if their allies are still here. Belle walked up to him. What do you think they were after? Ryan shrugged, and when she looked at Aragon, he did the same. We don't know if they are still here or not, but I am sure Grizzly and the king are keeping an eye out. He scratched the back of his scaly head. Sorry for bringing that up, I think I'm still worked up. To his surprise, Ryan walked up to him. Never be sorry for looking out for your team. Aragon chuckled. When did you get so sappy? Yesterday. He turned and went back to his bed. If Aragon had facial expressions, his jaw would be on the floor. This caused Belle to have a laugh of her own. This is the first time I have ever seen you speechless, Blue. For a split second, she gave Ryan a soft look, and Aragon caught it. Mischievously, he replied, I'm just glad my team is getting along. This earned him a look from Belle. What do you mean by your team? She walked up to the massive creature and poked him in the chest. He raised his hands and took a step back. Our team. As she walked away, he flicked the back of her head. She turned and punched him hard in the stomach. It was like punching a wall, and Ryan could tell she wasn't holding back. After the hit, he feigned being injured. With a big hand over his face and looking at Belle through his fingers. This is why you'll never be the team leader. This scene of a big brother playfully teasing his little sister made Ryan smile. He locked eyes with Aragon for a moment. He received a thumbs up from the Draconian. Aragon stood up and put on his Crocs as the door opened. Grizzly and Ina walked into their room. She immediately ran to Belle. "I heard about yesterday, how are you feeling?" Belle was inspected by the half-orc. "I'm fine, Aragon healed me as good as new." Ryan saw Ina's brow furrow as her attention was focused on him. "How was your mission, Ryan?" She walked over to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. He let her place a hand on him and looked her in the eye. There was an unexpected situation, but Aragon managed to save Isabel, otherwise successful. Ina smiled at him. "I am glad to see you warming up to our group here." Grizzly spoke up. "It is time for the banquet, team. You enjoy yourselves because you earned it." They went to the same hall as when Aragon was honored. When the crew entered, all the dwarves stood up and held their drinks in the air. They started cheering for the returning heroes. There were massive tables filled with all kinds of food and drink. They were led to the stage area where the table was prepared for them and the royal family. Grizzly translated for the group as the king addressed his people. "We are all gathered to thank our saviors." He pointed his tankard at the crew. "Give them your cheer and laughter, for they earned it." The dwarves and their king held their drinks aloft and emptied their tankards in unison. That was the signal for the party to begin. There was a lot of eating and drinking. Ryan stayed in his seat as the others enjoyed themselves. Grizzly and Ina decided to leave all pretenses behind and dance. Aragon was showing the younger dwarves his game stations. Belle was busy with a drinking contest with the female dwarves. They were good people. As he looked around, he saw a dwarf make his way to Aragon. The way he would shove his way in a straight line was suspicious. This newcomer had a mad look in his eye as he put his hand in his pocket. Ryan shot up and ran as fast as he could to stop him. He ducked between celebrating dwarves, and just as he was about to grab the dwarf, a stone was placed on Aragon's back. A fierce blue energy erupted from the draconian that threw Ryan and all the nearby dwarves back. As a beam of energy flew from Aragon, he had visions. He saw a group of men in military uniforms do a ritual. A massive portal opened, and a dragon appeared. A glowing man followed it through the portal. Reality seemed to compress and expand around these two. The glowing man fought and defeated the dragon. This glowing man looked around and took power from the dragon and seemed to stabilize reality. Aragon saw some of this power go into all living things. He saw the hearts of humans and animals grow stronger. The last thing the glowing man did was take the corpse of the dragon and make a floating island. For a moment, it looked like the island had a face, and it yelled one word. Freedom. As the power left Aragon, he fell to the ground. After a while, Ryan saw the draconian stir. He ran to Aragon. "Are you okay?" Aragon tried to stand but couldn't. Ryan called the team, and Aragon looked at Grizzly. "I saw something really bad, Grizz." The fear in his voice was chilling. End of Part 1. Part 2, Silver Tongues Chapter 9. After Aragon's sudden burst of magic, the hall was a wave of motion. The dwarves checked the integrity of their underground home. Ina and Belle helped to patch up the wounded. Grizzly worked with the king to bring order. Ryan stood with Aragon. The draconian was on the ground with his back against the wall. He looked up at his half-elven friend. There was blood dripping from his left hand. He tried to stand, but Ryan's push was enough to keep him there. "Dude, you're hurt, let me help." "You can help by keeping still. As soon as there is an opening, I will go to Ina and Isabel for help." This seemed to calm Aragon. Ryan looked down at him, and he clenched his jaw for a second. "What did you see?" "I'm not sure, all I know is that magic wasn't always a thing." Ryan nodded and took his watch over Aragon. "You need to rest. As soon as Grizzly comes back, we can figure out what comes next." He heard a small chuckle from Aragon. "Thanks, man, you're the best." He smiled at Aragon as he closed his eyes. Later, when he awoke, he saw Ina giving Ryan stitches. Ryan's arm was covered in old scars, including the burn he couldn't completely heal. He saw the edge of a tattoo peek out behind his sleeve. "I didn't know you had a tattoo," Aragon said as he sat up. Without a word, Ryan stood up and walked away while Ina was still busy. "Ryan, wait." He simply took his dagger and cut the string. "You are done." Ina stood up and reached out for Ryan, but he took a step back. "You are done." His breathing increased as he backed away. As he turned to run, he was met by a tall girl with red hair. He tried to dodge her, but she grabbed him by the collar and pulled him close. She put a hand behind his head and gave him a gentle headbutt. "Calm down, we won't hurt you." He weakly tried to escape her grip. This just earned him another gentle headbutt. "Calm down." He took a deep breath and stood up straight. "Thank you." He turned to Ina and raised his sleeve and sat down. "My apologies." Ina and Aragon shared a look as Belle walked over to check on him. "How are you feeling, Blue?" He sat up straight. "I'm fine. How did you do that?" "What are you talking about?" She looked over at Ryan, and he just looked down as Ina finished stitching him up. Aragon pointed to Ryan and mimed her headbutting. She rolled her eyes. "He was somewhere else, I just brought him back." Aragon shrugged and changed the subject. "Is everyone okay?" She nodded. "Yes, there were a few minor injuries, and apart from that, everyone is okay." He let out a big sigh. "Did you guys catch the guy?" She shook her head. At that moment, Ina was done with Ryan's stitches. She walked over to Belle and sat down next to them. She hugged the young girl. "What you did for Ryan was very kind." In the massive woman's arms and crushing hug, she forced out the words, "It wasn't anything major." Ina kissed her on the forehead. "Exactly." Ryan sat down next to Aragon. "Sorry about the tattoo, dude." Ryan gave him an awkward smile. "No, I am sorry, I overreacted." They all sat in silence for a few minutes until Grizzly came back. He stood over the group with a cigarette in his mouth. "How are you guys holding up?" Ina stood up and gave the old man a once-over. "How are you? Are you hurt anywhere?" Ryan saw Grizzly try to hide his smile as Ina inspected him. Ryan felt a pang in his heart for a second. "I'm fine, and the dwarves are fine too." She nodded, and Grizzly shifted his attention to Ryan. "After the blast, did you catch what happened to that dwarf?" Ryan shook his head and looked down. "Look at me, kid." Ryan took a few seconds to obey Grizzly's instruction. "This isn't your fault. You were the only one to notice." He went down on one knee so he could be at eye level. "Thank you for looking out for Aragon." "I failed." Grizzly put a hand on Ryan's shoulder. For a second, he wanted to remove the hand, but he let it be. "Aragon is alive, you are alive, and everyone here is alive. That isn't failure. You tried to do something, that isn't failure either." Ryan's face stayed neutral. Grizzly continued, "We are going to stay here a few more days. I am going to call Alexander." As he left, Ryan looked at Belle for a second. She was sitting next to Aragon and laughing with her friend. He felt the same pang in his heart, and he had no idea what that meant. He stood up and made an excuse that he wanted to go to the bathroom. When he arrived, he felt the room close in. He sat on the toilet and just tried to breathe. He stayed there for what felt like hours. He fought back his emotions, it was hard fought, and he almost lost. Aragon's voice appeared in the bathroom. "Ryan, are you in here?" He took a deep breath and went to Aragon. "Here I am." The Draconian's expressionless face looked back at him. "Grizzly is looking for you. Are you okay?" "I am fine." "What does Grizzly want?" Ryan felt bad because his voice was harsher than he intended. "He wanted to tell all of us together." He nodded and followed Aragon. They walked in silence. Ryan noticed how Aragon would glance at him every now and then. Is there something wrong, Eragon? For a split second, the Draconian flinched. I feel bad, my magic hurt you guys. I don't know what to say, or how to apologize. Ryan frowned while meeting Eragon's eyes. You should not have to apologize, you did nothing wrong. Eragon nodded. If that is the case, why are you beating yourself up? Ryan froze at Eragon's words. You have nothing to prove, Eragon. Neither do you. Ryan let out a short, bitter laugh. Yes, I do. He left Eragon to join the group. Chapter 10. As Ryan and Eragon walked up to the group, they saw that Grizzly was pacing. Ina was sitting down with a hard look on her face. Ryan was surprised by the old man's anxiety. What is wrong? Grizzly looked at him. Good, you two are here. I have some news. He took a deep breath and lit a cigarette. We have a situation, we were called for a trial. Belle spoke up. What trial? We didn't do anything. Ryan walked next to her. He wanted to place his hand on her shoulder. A memory of the previous night made him stop. He did decide to speak to her. No matter what happens, we will get through it. She gave him a smile and a hug. His arms dangled at his sides. He got a smile from both Grizzly and Ina. His cheeks flushed. Grizzly cleared his throat, and Belle let go of him. He felt the warmth drain from his skin. Ryan didn't like that. Grizzly started speaking. The trial is in Iceland. This caused Eragon to let out a big sigh. Why there? Those guys are the worst. Ryan looked at him. Who is in Iceland? The Vikings. They think it is still the 1100s. Grizzly walked closer. It is not just that, they handle things differently than we do. Ryan frowned. From my research, they are a hunter guild. How is that so different? Grizzly and Ina shared a look, then the old man took a step forward. Grizzly put his hand on his shoulder. I think you should go with Ina back to the Blood Rose. Looking the old man in the eye, he said, I should go with you as a witness. Whatever the charge is, I can help. Ina decided to step in. Ryan, you already did a lot by being here. Come with me and Ryan slapped Grizzly's hand off his shoulder. I am not a child, I already said I will go. His eyes were wild as he looked at Ina and Grizzly. Why won't you listen to me? They looked at each other for a moment, and they were speechless. Belle grabbed him by the shoulder and spun him around. He wanted to lash out, but he saw her face and the words were stuck in his throat. She saw the worried looks on their faces. She took Ryan's hand and led him to a quiet corner of the great hall. Why are you so anxious, Ryan? He looked down. I don't know. She squatted down to meet his eyes. I think you do. He clenched his jaw and looked to the side. He wanted to stay quiet. I do not want to be left behind. He received another hug from her. You are with us until the end. He took a deep breath before he spoke. Is that a promise? Yes. He raised his arms and hugged her back. He felt a similar pang in his heart, but this one felt good. She spoke into his ear. Ryan, you know that you have to apologize, right? He clenched his jaw for a second. I understand. He walked next to her to the older couple. He looked down for a moment before he met their eyes. I am sorry for the way I acted. I am afraid. Ina almost dove at the young man and gave him a big hug. Why are you scared? We are all here for you. I am afraid that you would leave me behind. At the last word, it felt like a knife stabbed him in the chest. She let go and held his face so that she could look into his eyes. As long as I have breath in my body, you will never be left behind. Thank you, I will do my best to remember that. He looked around at the people around him. He couldn't understand them, but he understood one thing. He would protect them with his life. He then looked back at Grizzly. When do we leave? Grizzly took a drag. We leave in the morning. You guys get some sleep. Grizzly then called Eragon closer. Keep what you saw to yourself until we talk with Alexander. Sure thing. After Grizzly gave Eragon a hard slap on the shoulder, the group separated. Ina and Grizzly went to their room. Belle went with some female dwarves. Ryan and Eragon went back to the camp for the night. As they walked, Ryan looked at Eragon. I need to apologize to you, too. You tried to help me, but I didn't listen. Eragon slapped him on the back. Don't worry, as long as you are okay. They kept walking, and Ryan became curious about the Viking Guild. Eragon, I don't know a lot about the Vikings. What are they like? The Draconian took a deep breath. They are assholes. There is a reason why Ina isn't going. Ryan stayed quiet as he waited for Eragon to continue. They keep orcs as slaves there, and to them, a half-orc like Ina is an abomination. Ryan felt rage build, but he understood where that thinking came from. How do they treat you there? Eragon chuckled. They know better than to mess with me. Ryan thought for a moment. Did Grizzly tell me not to go because of my half-elven heritage? Eragon just nodded. The rest of their walk was in silence. As they all separated, Grizzly gave one more look back at Ryan as they went back to their room. How are you holding up, old man? He shrugged. Barely, but that is thanks to you. He took her hand and linked his fingers with hers. I hate it that you can't come with us. She gave his hand a squeeze. Me too, but you know how it is. They walked to their room. As soon as the door was closed, Ina decided to speak with a smile. What did you think of Belle and Ryan? He chuckled while lighting a cigarette. I am just glad she found a guy her age to focus on. Ina sat on the bed. Come on, that was cute. Maybe when she was 10, but she is in her 20s. He finished his cigarette and lay down on the bed. Ina took her place next to him. Grizzly, I am really nervous about tomorrow. Will you be okay? He pulled her head to his chest. Don't worry about us. I'll get the kids out in one piece no matter what. She looked up and gave him a kiss. Don't, I have to get up early. She gave him a mischievous look. You don't have to get up early if you don't go to sleep. He gave her a smile and another kiss. That is why you are the smart one. Chapter 11. Ryan and Eragon lay in their beds. Eragon, are you still sleeping? He heard a stir in the dark room. Nah, what do you need? Ryan took a deep breath. Do you remember the tattoo? After a second, Eragon answered. Yes. Have you ever heard of the Silver Tongues? I have. Ryan gathered his nerve for a few seconds. They took me when I was a child and molded me. He wanted to stop speaking, but knew he shouldn't. Into a killer, he took a deep breath and forced the rest of the story out of his soul. They made me do things I did not want to. His voice started cracking. For the first time I feel like I might belong. Eragon climbed out of his bed and walked to Ryan. It's okay, dude, you don't have to say anything else. He squatted down next to his bed. Seeing as you shared something, he stood up and lit the torch to light up the room. Grizzly told me to show up the day we met, Ryan said, sitting up at Eragon's words. Why? He wanted to see your reaction. He told me what you went through and said you might need a friendly face. This absurd statement made Ryan laugh. He wanted to see how you would react. At that point, we didn't know if you were an escapee or he trailed off and looked to the side. Ryan nodded. Or an assassin or spy. I think I understand Grizzly better now. Eragon squatted next to Ryan's bed again. Ryan continued, it makes sense why everyone went out of their way to speak to me. He locked eyes with Eragon. What is your verdict? The Draconian looked at him with the same expressionless look. I judge you to be a cool guy. He stood up and killed the torch. Belle also thinks that. In the darkness, Ryan asked, "She really thinks that?" He felt a warmth build in his chest. "Good night, Ryan." Ryan went to sleep with a smile on his face. The next morning, the team gathered at the airship. Ryan had his hair tied up in a high bun, which showed off his small, pointed ears. Eragon was leaning against the airship, and he was blowing fire rings from boredom. Belle was the next to arrive. Her normally wild red hair was styled into a beautiful braid. Seeing her, Eragon choked on his fire and laughter. This caused the girl's cheeks to redden. Not out of embarrassment, but anger. She walked up to him and started punching him. He did his normal feigning of injury. When she was done, she looked at Ryan. "Good morning, did you get some sleep?" Ryan nodded, and very softly he added, "The braid. It looks nice." Her face flushed, and Eragon's laughter started again. She quickly turned and attacked him again. Ryan couldn't help but smile at these two. He then saw Grizzly and Ina walk closer with linked hands. She bent down and kissed Grizzly. The old man saw Ryan look at him. Grizzly's face was impassive, but he did get a smile and a wink from Ina. When the group was together, Ina gave each one a hug and farewell. Grizzly did get the longest hug. Ryan also heard the old man whisper, "I'll miss you." That pang hit Ryan again. When she gave Ryan his hug, she whispered in his ear, "Be careful." Never in his life had he given such a tight hug. Their airship took off. Everyone was on deck and waved at Ina. The airship felt so big and empty. Ryan spent most of his time on deck as they flew. He had a lot to think about. He knew that Eragon and Belle were below deck. They would take turns playing games and play fighting. Even though they were important to him, sometimes he felt suspicious. That was what he wanted to figure out. During his thoughts, he heard a familiar clanking. "Why are you out here alone, sir?" With a half smile, he answered, "I am thinking." "What about, sir?" "My place." "Your place is below deck with the others, sir." "It is warm." He was caught off guard by this skeleton, again. When he turned around, he received a small salute from Femur. "Sly skeleton," he said to himself. He then went below deck. Grizzly was staring out the window with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. As he walked past, he placed a hand on the older man's shoulder. "We will see her soon." Grizzly looked up and gave him a smile and a nod. He then kept staring out the window. Eragon walked up to him. "We need a ref." Belle shoved him to the side. "Eragon is cheating." He shoved her in turn. "I am not, I am simply better than you." She started punching him in the stomach repeatedly. With a smile, Ryan asked, "How is he cheating?" Belle grabbed him by the sleeve and pulled him to the gaming system. "He keeps blowing fire circles to distract me." He felt an unfamiliar feeling the entire time they played. A few hours before they landed, the crew was called for a meeting. "It is time that we talk about the trial." He lit a cigarette and took a drag. "I didn't tell you guys because I didn't want you to worry." The crew sat down. All the merriment in the group vanished. "I am sorry," he took another drag with a deep breath, "this is bigger than we thought." Belle got up and started pacing. "Bigger how? What happened?" When the magic was drained from Eragon, a portal opened. Eragon rose. "Where?" Grizzly shrugged. "I don't know. Alexander told me to keep you guys safe until he gets there." Ryan decided to speak up. "What does this mean for Eragon?" Eragon and Belle looked at Grizzly. "I don't know, but we will figure it out together." Ryan felt a pit form in his stomach. He stood up and went outside. He held onto the railing and emptied his mind. He might have to kill, and he needed to be ready. Just as his mind wandered to what he could have to do, he felt a hand on his shoulder. When he turned around, he locked eyes with Belle. She flinched. "Ryan, are you okay?" "Yes. He wanted to feel nothing, but he couldn't. No, I am not okay, Isabel. I am worried about Aragon. She smiled at him. I am worried too, that is what friends do. He smiled back at her. Isabel, what is your plan if they wish to punish Aragon? She frowned as she thought for a few seconds. If they want to hurt Aragon, they will have to go through me first. Ryan nodded. He was ready. Chapter 12. They landed on a dock in Iceland. Even though it was summer, there was a chill. The orcs that they were used to hauled the airship just like they normally would. The only difference was that there were no songs or laughter. The thick steel chains made sure of that. As the ship was secured, Grizzly spoke. I need you three to wait for me here. I need to make some arrangements. Belle asked, how long will you be gone? She sounded very anxious. I don't know, I have to find out where the trial is and how far out Alexander is. She just nodded at his answer. Aragon spoke up. Why can't we wait on the ship? The old man sighed. They are afraid you will try to run, they need to see you. Ryan looked around. All the people wore pelts. What was strange was the way these pelts were worn over regular clothes. They were barbarians, but they weren't stupid. Ryan felt a smile form on his lips at the thought. He shook his head to clear it of unnecessary thoughts. He needed to focus. Ryan? Why do you do that? He looked over to Belle. Do what? I don't know how to explain it. You try to get rid of happy thoughts, I guess? He looked at her with a frown. I need to stay focused on the mission. He said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. We aren't on a mission. We are here to help Aragon. He took a deep breath. What if things do not go according to plan? We might have to fight our way out, and I have to be ready. He felt another pang as she looked down while wringing her hands. After a moment, she looked up. I know. You don't have to worry on your own. Come sit with us and we'll work on battle strategies. He nodded and followed her to sit next to the Draconian. There were 3 stools next to the airship. He had thought she was serious, but Aragon had handheld game systems for the 3 of them. I am glad you could join us. As the newcomer, you have first dibs on what we play. For a moment, Ryan wanted to yell at him, but he relented with a half smile. Street Fighter, and this time I will beat you. This caused Aragon to laugh. We are brave today, let's get it on. They played together for about an hour, and in between the games, Aragon told them about the Dwarven Queen. The king said that I helped without parley, but I just blanked. I wanted to ask for gold later, but I forgot. Belle slapped him on the back. Sure you did. You're a terrible liar. Ryan had a smile as they bantered. That smile vanished when he heard snickering. He saw 3 young men standing on the other side of their ship. What do we have here? A blue lizard, a ginger, and a pocketknife ear? Before the others could answer, Ryan answered, a blue dragon. Everyone on both sides was stunned by his words. Aragon laughed, and Belle shot up and stomped towards them. He is a half-elf. As she got close, one of them pulled back his fist. Ryan ran as fast as he could. Just before the man's fist reached Belle's face, he managed to grab his wrist and slammed his elbow into the attacker's face. He was knocked out. Ryan placed his hand on Belle's shoulder and moved her behind him. Do you two wish to fight too? They looked at their friend on the ground and advanced. The first tried to punch, but Ryan blocked with his elbow. A crunch was heard as his finger broke. Ryan grabbed his wrist in a split second and threw him over his shoulder. As he fell, Ryan darted to the next attacker. He ducked underneath another punch and struck him in the ribs. As the man doubled over, Ryan grabbed the back of his head and drove his face into his knee. In a few seconds, 3 young men were lying on the ground. They all groaned in pain. He looked back at Belle, and her eyes were wide. Eragon stood next to her as she spoke to Ryan. Ryan, what was that? He frowned. What do you mean? They wanted to fight. She held up her hands, a small blush crept up her neck. Not that. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she stayed silent. Ryan was confused. What did she mean? Eragon spoke up as he turned her to him. That doesn't matter, B. What does matter is that you are okay. As they spoke, they heard a person laugh. It was an older man with white hair and piercing blue eyes. Good day, young man. He held out his hand to Ryan. My name is Bjorn, and I was quite impressed by your skill. Ryan looked him over. He wore a clean silver suit with a loincloth over his trousers. He shook his hand. I heard the Vikings hated half-breeds. The older man smiled at him. Those values are outdated. I would prefer for us to be more progressive. Eragon moved next to Ryan. If that is the case, how about you shake my hand? Ryan noticed a small twitch in Bjorn's eyes as he shook Eragon's hand. Bell then entered the conversation. Why did those jerks attack us? The group looked at the trio limping away. Bjorn sighed. They are taught wrong by their parents, and their parents are taught wrong by the guild. It is an ignorant cycle. Eragon then asked, if that is the case, what can you do about it? Bjorn looked at him with a smile. I can't do anything. It is the people who have to decide. They have to decide that another's life is worth something. Bjorn then drew their attention to the orcs working. These poor creatures have to toil so that we can live easier lives. If they were not here, that would signify their value to my people. Bell decided to ask, why don't you just set them free? Not only will my people revolt, they will be more radical in their beliefs. After a few seconds of thought, Bell asked again, how would you set the orcs free? He smiled at her, you need to use traditions to your advantage. That is the only way you can have the elders and youngsters agree. Ryan listened to the old man. He then asked, what traditions can help us? You have stumbled onto one of the important ones. Don't you find it odd that you fought in the street and you weren't punished? Ryan looked at the streets, and people were walking as if nothing had happened. Eragon spoke up, you bring up a good point. What is your deal with fighting? In the Viking clan, strength is vital, and you can make wagers or just fight for fun. Before the crew could speak, he looked at his watch. It seems that I have to go. I wish you luck. He turned and walked away. Eragon looked at the others. Was that weird to you guys, too? Bell nodded. Who was he? Ryan said, he is probably highly ranked. Bell then frowned and asked, what makes you say that? The way he spoke, and how he just happened upon us. He knew we would be here and wanted to use us in his scheme. Eragon scratched his chin. If his scheme also helps the orcs, it can't be all bad. Bell then said, yes, but why would he come to us? Eragon thought for a moment. Maybe it has something to do with the trial. He could try to leverage that. Bell looked lost. How, though? Ryan processed everything. He gave us all the information. If he truly wants to free the orcs, he will set the stage for us. Eragon nodded. It really doesn't matter if we try to figure out what happens. How about another game? The next half hour was spent on idle chatter about Eragon's escapades in the dwarven city while they waited for Grizzly. When he finally arrived, he seemed older. He took a big drag. I have some bad news, all the guilds are here. They want to meet all of you. Bell stood up. Is Alexander here? Grizzly shook his head. The trial won't officially start without him, but they still want to meet you. Ryan looked up at Grizzly. That sounds like intimidation tactics. The old man smiled with the cigarette dangling from his mouth. That is because it is. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you while I'm here. They all got up and followed Grizzly. Eragon held back with Ryan. He whispered into his ear, earlier, Belle thought it was super cool that you defended her. Ryan froze, then blushed and then walked next to Aragon so that he was shielded from Belle's view. Chapter 13. As the four walked to the court area, Ryan noticed that more people just wore pelts. They were doing administrative work. This made Ryan chuckle to himself. These people see themselves as warriors of old, but they are just people. What's so funny? He didn't pay attention, and Belle's question startled him. He didn't want to show her his embarrassment. They consider themselves barbarians, but they do paperwork like civilized people. That seems ridiculous to me. Before she could speak, Aragon interrupted. Conan is using a printer. They looked to where he was pointing, and a very large, scarred and muscular man was waiting for documents to print. Belle then added, Conan the librarian. This caused all three to laugh. All the Vikings who were working seemed very unhappy about the interruption. Grizzly tried to keep his face neutral, but he hid his laughter with a cough. Conan the librarian, I'll remember that. Ina will get a kick out of that. Belle smiled, and as soon as Grizzly looked away, she had a sad look on her face. This only lasted a moment as they walked to the courtroom. They were met by two massive guards. They wore nothing but loincloths and held massive axes. Grizzly spoke, we are here for the trial. One nodded and opened the door for them. One of the guards led them in. What Ryan saw was a massive room with 5 elevated podiums. They were led to what was essentially a concrete box. There were no markings, except for scratches from those judged in the past. Each podium had a massive mural on the wall right behind it. The one on the far left had the rose with the dripping petals. This one, Ryan recognized as the Blood Rose Guild. He studied the others. The next one was a silver helmet with 2 crossed axes. The next one was a golden moon with a silver star in the middle. The next one was a golden side profile of a woman with a crown. The last one was an open book with no adornments. Ryan then turned his attention back to the crew. The guard was still there. He was trying and failing to intimidate Grizzly. There is no smoking in the Great Hall. Grizzly spoke with his cigarette dangling from his mouth. If you want these, you will have to take them from me. As the guard stepped forward, Grizzly flicked his axe. The guard's eyes went wide as it turned to smoke. Without a moment's hesitation, he ran out of the courtroom. Ryan frowned at the old man. Is it wise to antagonize them? After blowing a large cloud of smoke, Grizzly replied, they respect the show of strength here, that little show could help us. He thought over Grizzly's words. He then noticed that Belle was pacing, and the always talkative Aragon was silent. He could almost feel the anxiety emanate from them. He felt a deep anger for those who caused those feelings in his friends. After about 15 minutes, the 2 guards from earlier entered the hall. One walked up to the group while the other stood by the door. You all must enter the dock, the judges will be here soon. As he spoke, he had his eyes on a smoking Grizzly. As they entered the box, Ryan noticed that there were 6 stools for them to sit on. The guard then took his place next to the box. The crew sat down to wait for their accusers. Suddenly, the guard yelled from the door, all rise. The crew stood up and looked at the door. Introducing the leader of the Viking clan, Jarl Bjorn Nyberg, and our greatest hero, the Underjarl Sten Grimstad. The crew saw the man they had met at the dock. This time, he was only wearing a loincloth and thick boots. He had many deep scars all along his very muscular body. His second in command had thick and long black hair. He was similarly dressed as the Jarl. What set him apart was the burn scar that took up the left half of his head. He also wore a black eye patch. Ryan could tell that these 2 men were extremely dangerous. For a moment, Ryan locked eyes with Bjorn. He nodded at Ryan. Bjorn took his place at the podium in front of the mural of the silver helmet and crossed axes. Sten took his place behind him. The guard gave another shout to introduce the next guild. Introducing the Grand Shepherd of the Sons of God Order, Rashid Abbott, and the Protector of Faith, Warden Ibrahim Holloway. Two men walked in with dark robes with white collars. The one in front had a white turban, and the one in the back had a beige one. Both men seemed to be in their 60s with very thick and well-groomed beards. Rashid took his place at the podium in front of the mural of a golden moon with a silver star in the middle. Ibrahim took his place behind him. The guard gave his shout to introduce the next guild. Introducing the matriarch of the Amazon sisterhood, Reina, and her shadow Sombra. Two women walked in with long white dresses with golden chest plates. On their heads, they wore large helmets with plumes that obscured their faces. The leader had a purple plume, and the follower had a white plume. They looked forward while walking as if they were floating. It was quite the sight, but it was incredibly slow. Reina took her place at the podium in front of the mural of a golden side profile of a woman with a crown. Sombra took her place behind her. The guard gave his shout to introduce the next guild. Introducing the leader of the Wizard Guild, Selim, and his second Fae. A man and woman with brown hair and brown eyes entered. They looked so similar that they could only be siblings. They wore plain gray robes and entered the hall. As they passed the guard, they bowed and thanked him. They bowed in front of every podium and the box. Selim took his place at the podium in front of the mural of the open book with no adornments. Faye took her place behind him. Bjorn spoke to the hall. Until Alexander arrives, we will keep our judgments to ourselves, and the accused is under my protection. Ryan noticed how Sten looked slightly surprised by the declaration. Reina scoffed. Bjorn ignored her response and continued speaking. Also, you may each ask one question before the Blood Rose arrives. Why? I say we just execute the beast and go home. She then looked back at Sombra. This island is very drab. Ryan gripped the side of the box as hard as Sombra nodded at Reina. He failed to control himself as he stood. If you want to hurt him, you will have to go through me. The elegantly dressed woman spat on the ground and looked him in the eye. What could you do, boy? She had a half smile as she spat her words at him. He felt a familiar emptiness as he spoke. I will kill you. In her offense, she tried to run at a ready Ryan, but Sombra grabbed her and pulled her back. As she spat insults and tried to escape from Sombra, Bjorn hit his podium with his open palm. Calm down, Reina. You Amazons pride yourselves on your decorum, yet you are goaded by a boy. She stood up straight and took her place behind the podium. She decided to keep her mouth shut. Bjorn then turned his attention to Ryan. I respect your determination to protect your friend, but remember where you are. Ryan nodded at Bjorn. Jarl, I know exactly where I am. It was Reina who forgot her place. Bjorn gave him a smile as Reina grabbed onto her podium so hard that a piece broke off. I like you, boy, and before we proceed, I have one more question. Would you have killed Reina? With a glance at Aragon, he answered. Yes, her guard too if I do not have any other choice. Bjorn let out a hearty laugh. I like you. He looked over to Grizzly. You have a fine apprentice, Bear. Looking back, Ryan saw the look on the crew's faces. Aragon gave him a thumbs up. Grizzly looked annoyed. What made him feel guilty was the surprised look on Belle's face. Had he gone too far? Bjorn started to speak again. We were given evidence of what happened and why they were with the dwarves. Did anyone not get the email? Rashid raised his hand. Bjorn frowned as the Grand Shepherd spoke. We do not believe in the use of the internet. We did receive a copy of the evidence on parchment. Ryan heard soft chuckling from Aragon behind him. Selim spoke to Rashid. Great Shepherd, the Jarl just wanted to know if all received the report, not how it was received. Rashid nodded in understanding. My apologies, Jarl. He turned to Selim. My thanks to you, Master Wizard. Reina then decided to speak up. Rashid, if you just use the internet for contact with us, I am sure God will forgive you. Rashid's face hardened as he looked at her. Do not speak of God, for you can never understand his will. The internet is filled with degeneracy and will not be tolerated. Ryan looked over to Bjorn. He had his palm on his forehead as the leaders bickered. Enough. Can we move on? Reyna and Rashid decided to keep their mouths shut. Bjorn then explained what happened at Goldhaven. After Bjorn's speech, Selim was the first to speak. Did any of you see what this stone or attacker looked like? Ryan stood up and spoke. No, it happened so quickly that I only caught a glimpse of the stone. He then sat back down as he waited for another question. Rashid spoke. Beast, what did you see? Ryan wanted to rise, but Bel's hand on his shoulder stopped him. He kept to his seat and kept his mouth shut. Aragon rose and answered. I was playing some games with a couple of kids. I then felt something on my back, and I felt my magic being drained. Apart from that, I don't remember anything. Faye then asked a question out of turn. What type of magic do you have? The guild leaders gave her a stern look, and Selim grabbed her by the collar and whispered into her ear. Aragon decided to answer. I can only use healing magic. Ibrahim had his turn to speak out of turn. Blasphemy. Only God and his prophets can heal. Not a demon like you. Bjorn slammed his fist down. The next person who speaks out of turn will go to the pits. This caused everyone to flinch. After the room had calmed, he then looked at Reyna. Do you have any questions? She smiled at Bjorn. My question is for you, Jarl. He frowned, unorthodox, but you may proceed. May I be the executioner? She smiled at a wide-eyed Ryan. Bjorn took a deep breath. Ryan knew that this brief meeting had taken its toll on him. They then heard the guard at the door shout again. Introducing the guild master of the Blood Rose, Alexander Draconovich, and the priestess of the Lara Ina. As they walked to their podium, Rashid and Ibrahim were fuming. They were only kept quiet by Bjorn's threat. Ina gave the crew a small wave as they took their place at their podium. Ryan felt as if a massive weight fell off his shoulders. Ina took her place behind the podium while Alexander stood before the other podiums. He gave them a deep bow. My apologies for being late. Bjorn gave him a quick nod as he took his place. Chapter 14. While the other guilds had their attention locked on Alexander, he started speaking. Jarl Nyberg, may I state the reason why I was late? Bjorn answered, proceed, I trust it is a good reason. Alexander gave a slight bow as he looked at the other guild leaders. I went to Australia to study the anomalous portal there. Ibrahim wanted to speak, but Rashid held up his hand. The protest died in his throat as the vampire continued. The accused magic is very chaotic in its existence, and that is reflected in the portal and its surroundings. A frowning Bjorn decided to speak. What are you trying to say? The portal is unstable, but the ripples are calming as it is shrinking. He pulled out a stone from his pocket. A picture large enough for the entire trial to see appeared. A large portal that looked like a massive blue whirlpool. There was a crater beneath it. It was as if it ate part of the world in its creation. Selim spoke up. You say that it is shrinking. Do you think it will stabilize to a certain size or will it disappear after a time? Alexander gave him a fanged smile. Master Mage, the way portals work is very simple. It uses the energy that created it to sustain itself. By my estimation, it will stabilize in about a month and disappear a few days after. Selim gave him a deep bow. I thank you for your teachings. Reyna, who had never once hidden her boredom, spoke. Does this portal require it to live? Alexander lost his smile. When the portal was created, a large amount of Aragon's magic was stolen. It doesn't need his life to exist, but Reyna interrupted him as she stared down at Ryan. That is enough for me, I vote for execution. In the dock, everyone was shocked by her statement. When Ryan noticed Ina, he didn't see the kind woman he knew. She was a beast that wanted to be let loose on her target. Ryan then looked back at Reyna and saw an enraged Bjorn standing before her podium. Do you enjoy mocking this hall? The calm way he spoke sent a chill running up Ryan's spine. I just want to dash at this moment. Bjorn grabbed her podium and he broke the stone structure out of the floor. He tossed it to the side as if it weighed nothing. I don't care who you lead, or who your allies are. If you speak again, I will rip out your tongue. He stared into her eyes. He was waiting for defiance that never came. Bjorn only went back to his podium when Reyna broke eye contact. As Bjorn returned to his podium, he then took it upon himself to ask another question. Guildmaster Draconovich, this portal, do you think it was formed to let something in or out? Alexander, who was unfazed by the display, answered. A portal is like a door, you can either enter or exit, but from what my members told me, it seems that some wish to flee this world. Rashid then asked his question. It sounded more like a curse than a question. Creature, what of the other side? Wouldn't other fiends like you enter our world? Alexander nodded. You are correct, Grand Shepherd, but as I mentioned before, we have a month to prepare. Ibrahim then asked, what can we expect beyond the veil? I don't know, for you see, there was a world just as large as this one, and there is no way of knowing where the portal will appear on the other side. As the leaders spoke, Ryan noticed the look of anxiety cover their faces. The most fearful were the Amazons, but for different reasons. Bjorn took a deep breath. Alexander, do you have any reasons to object to Aragon's execution? I have 3 reasons. First, he is a sworn brother to the dwarves, and they are a great ally or enemy. Second, he is a capable warrior and is stronger than many human men. Third, he is the only one that I know of who can use healing magic. When Ryan looked at them, he already knew how the verdict would lie. What he did not know was what the Vikings would choose. Bjorn looked at Reyna. There was nothing but contempt in his gaze. I already know your verdict, and your voice fills me with rage. You may stay quiet, just like your mute guard. There was fury in her wide eyes, but she did have enough sense to keep her mouth shut. Mage Selim, have you reached a verdict? Selim and Faye bowed deeply. We have chosen to spare Master Aragon, for his unique magic was stolen and is therefore innocent. Bjorn bowed to the Wizard Guild. Grand Shepherd, have you reached a verdict? Rashid bowed to Bjorn. The beast is not of this world and wields a perverse power that should only belong to God. He should be purged. Bjorn bowed to the Sons of God order. Guildmaster, have you reached a verdict? Alexander bowed to Bjorn. I wish for Aragon to live. Bjorn bowed to the Blood Rose Guild. He took his place behind his podium. He looked at the group in the dock. It seems that I am in the position of the deciding vote. Ryan felt his throat dry almost immediately. Bjorn wasn't a normal man. He locked eyes with Ryan. When we met, you defended that girl to your side. Would you do the same for your blue friend? Without hesitation, Ryan shot to his feet. Yes. Bjorn started laughing. We will resolve this the way of my people. You will fight, single combat with a warrior of my choosing. If you win, your friend walks free. Do you accept? I do. Who is my opponent? Bjorn leaned over his podium. You accepted very quickly. What if I chose someone I know you can't beat? Ryan felt a scowl forming on his face. Bjorn started laughing again. I like you, boy. How about you join us if you lose? Sten broke his silence with his words. Jarl, he is a half-breed. Bjorn turned to Sten. He is very skilled, and he could push the recruits to be better. He turned his attention back to Ryan. What do you say? If you lose, you join us. For a moment, Ryan was confused at the Jarl's words. He then had a thought. In your culture, you never ask for something without a fight. Do you want me to join you for free? Bjorn's smile widened. What do you want? Ryan took a deep breath. I want you to let the slaves go free and to never take slaves again. Sten spoke up again. Your life isn't worth that, boy. Watch your words. Bjorn held up his hand, and Sten backed down. He has a point, you are a good prospect, but just a prospect. Grizzly raised his hand. Yes, Bear. As Grizzly lowered his hand, he spoke. What if I fight for the boy and myself? If I win, you let the orcs free and outlaw slavery, and if I lose, I will join with Ryan. Before Sten could react, Bjorn yelled, agreed. Sten glared at Bjorn with his one eye. Sten, he is a legendary warrior and a brother to the dwarves. We could get the highest quality weapons if you win. Sten was shocked for a moment, and then a big smile formed on his lips. Grizzly, I look forward to our fight. Grizzly lit a cigarette and gave Sten a salute. Bjorn then looked back at Ryan. For your opponent, I would defer to Reyna. Everyone, including the Amazons, was surprised at his words. Would you like to fight the boy? The quiet Amazon looked surprised, but a sadistic smile spread across her face. In Amazon culture, it is taboo for the matriarch to touch a man outside of war. Sombra will be your opponent. Bjorn smiled. Our rules are simple, you fight until you can't get up or surrender. You will decide the rules of your fight. We will reconvene at the pits in 3 days. He walked down to the dock and placed his hand on Ryan's shoulder. I wish you luck, he then looked at Aragon, I wish you luck too. Aragon spoke with his expressionless face. I don't need luck. Ryan is a badass. With a final look at Ryan, Bjorn said, you have good friends. When Alexander and the other guild members left, Ryan's legs gave out. He fell on his stool. He had a massive sigh of relief. He looked back at Grizzly. The old man gave him a quick nod. He nodded back. Belle placed her hand on his shoulder. That was very brave of you. For a brief moment, his anxiety disappeared. All he could do was smile at her. Before he could reply, Belle grabbed him and pulled him into a tight hug. He didn't fight back. All he could do was accept her affection, and he was happy to do so. She then let go and looked to Ina. She entered the dock with the crew, and she had a big smile on her face. I missed you three, she hugged Belle, Ryan and Aragon. I am glad you are safe. Grizzly cleared his throat. 3. With a smile, she let go of the crew and grabbed him by his shoulders. She pulled him in for a big kiss. I missed them, but my heart hurt for you. Ryan couldn't help but smile as the old man's cheeks flushed red. Not in front of the kids, Ina, she just laughed and kissed him again. The trial was over for that day. The crew deserved something good, and Ina provided that relief. As they left the hall, Ryan took a deep breath. He needed to be at his best for the fight. For a moment, he felt nervous. He then looked at the crew, who would help without hesitation. He just needs to ask.